he gave a lecture on the first part of this course. And his thing was about the Clean Power Plan, basically, and trying to understand, the dynamics behind all the lawsuits against it. But he also shared a paper with me called, get this for a title, Naive Energy Markets. I mean, it's poetry. I'll see if I can share it with you all. But he goes through all of the issues we've been talking about and laughing about through the first part of the course, and I mean in incredible detail. And I think there's some errors in this. I mean, he's looking for feedback, and I think a lot of you actually could find some of these errors. I mean, oh my God! I mean, just the. So he gives a whole history of how this competitive equilibrium theory became the dogma, in the United States. And just like I said, I mean, you don't have to be left or right wing to see how silly this is. It's just a, I mean, just like, what's an analogy? I mean, it's just, you can look and see, well, that's wood. No, it's plastic. And you can test and say, yeah, it's plastic. And it doesn't make you left or right wing. It's just you do a study and, just to study a bit more and you see it's not, it's plastic. Yeah. But it's remarkable. So I'll see if I can get permission to share this, because it's, and you think, my God, how scary, a 40-page law paper, but after the first month of this course, you can read the first 20 pages and you'll think it was co-authored by myself. So it's exciting to me because there's no community of researchers who share my opinion. It's not that, you know what I mean? It's not that people, in industry people say, yeah, of course. But in terms of people doing research, because you can't do mathematical research once you've dismissed mathematical economics. So mathematical economics give you a framework to do mathematics. And if you try to put all the realities of human behavior and risk and all of that, there's no mathematics to do, it's too hard. And so there's no mathematical community, and there's an empirical community of two, but then you spend 10 years of doing a study to find out that there's not enough investment in Texas, and I'm not going to do that. So, yeah. So here's somebody who does that, who actually goes and it seems so bright in here. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they open lens.
Yeah. Well, that's way better. So I'm really. That's why I lost track of time. We were having discussion after his talk, and I suddenly looked at my watch and realized I had to walk from the law school here in 80 degree. It's a beautiful day, but not this shirt. All right. Okay, so where are we? Okay, so this is hard. So basically, I've been saying we're going to do AGC like every lecture for the last 2 weeks. And in fact, you asked me, when are we going to talk about AGC? And I'm going to talk about AGC, And
What's AGC?
you'll find out. Automatic generation control. Yeah. And it's a secondary control. It's one aspect of secondary control. I spent a lot of time putting together this lecture. This course is still immature. It's still, in construction. And I've tried to leave out some things that, that I thought I could leave out. And in putting together this lecture, I realized some things I've left out I shouldn't have left out. Like some of the stuff on DC power flow, we really do need it. So I regret that. I think what I'm going to do is, I think the last couple lectures won't be, I'm going to cover AC and DC power flow. And there's some really nice applications of our relaxation techniques for the AC power flow problem, which is really very recent and it's really shaken up the industry. I think I'll do that, but it's, you won't be testing on it. And next year when I teach the course, I'll put it where it belongs, right after economic dispatch. Okay, so now I've got 4 headings here. I'll quickly recap what we did last time. And I forgot to point out the joke in some of those slides. So remember last time we were looking at this grid level control design, very stylized, just to give some insight about what the issues are. And so rho of t again is this common signal broadcast to all of the generators, possibly scaled. I mean, will be scaled, for each generator. And we just have this deviation in frequency on the outside, and this reference is 0 because we want to regulate that to 0. And we ended up coming to this a pure integral controller, which I would now admit still is pretty crappy, and so, yeah, this is a joke I forgot to point out, is that, here I am doing this the day before the lecture, and here's my design. I told some of you privately, that's 10:47 p.m. and my battery's half full, and I've got my Simulink design going, and it worked pretty well, but I was pretty surprised at how crappy it is, the fact that there's so much low frequency content in a way, but that's only 10 seconds. It's not that low frequency, and then when you crank up the gain, that really is 10.
What's the range of the red?
Yeah, so that's the disturbance.
Right, but it goes from where to where?
Oh yeah, that is actually it. So we're getting only a attenuation of like tenfold, whatever, because the units don't really matter. It's not. This is all make believe. There are no units in this problem. Because I've normalized everything. And then this really is 10. So I went from 0.1 to 10. So I increased the gain 100-fold. Now our gain margin was only 5, it turns out. So that's stupid. So in just less than 10 seconds, it just explodes. So you can see here now. Oh, this is the morning. That's right. The next day, the battery's fully charged. Yeah, I guess I don't have the one. Yeah, it's midnight. And the battery is almost dead. So you can see I was hacking a lot between these two slides. And you notice I was very careful to keep the seed the same. That's something I remember in MATLAB. When you do random noise experiments, make sure you set the seed the same so you can have fair comparisons. So you won't be changing the disturbance at each iteration. So you can do that by double-clicking the random noise generator. Okay. And so here I put in a DC offset. In the morning I realized, shit, I should at least show that I am rejecting DC disturbance. And so it does work. And it is true, I only increased it 5-fold to get this unstable behavior. And the gain margin is roughly 5. And if you actually did look at the margin command, you can't read this, but it tells me the gain margin now is negative, like 1 dB. So it just became unstable. So 4.8, if I put in 0.48, it would have been stable, but it would have been incredibly oscillatory. It would have taken a long time to settle down. All right. So this is the sort of thing you do playing around with Simulink. You waste a lot of time, but it's fun. So I'm going to make you do it. I've been struggling with a homework problem assignment that's manageable, and I finally did it this morning. I'm going to get you to take my code, and we'll have a contest. See if you can beat my bandwidth. I'll see how far you can go. Okay. So this is not reality. Okay. This is just an initial cut to get some sense of what's going on. It's not that far, but there's some other stuff that we've been hiding, and understand what they really do. We'll need to fill in some gaps. So basically, like in some, every region's different. In some places, they actually take load forecast errors and generation fluctuations. They're measured, and they use that in the feedback loop. And I think that's really cool. So BPA, the Bonneville Power Authority, takes all the data, and they use that to synthesize the control signals to be sent to generators. And I've never been able to get the details. I've asked them, and they've told me they don't use control. They just have deadbeat control. They say, basically, remember I was very careful. I said that a compensator has to have high gain at low frequencies and low gain at high frequencies. When I actually got in contact with the control engineer, they claimed an all-pass thing where they just, we're asking the generators to follow exactly the disturbance. I don't believe it. I think he misunderstood the question. But it just shows how hard it is to get to reality. I don't know the real answer. I've been asking for years. Well, maybe he didn't know. Maybe he wasn't really, the one who's doing the Bodhi plots. Yeah.
So deadbeat control?
Yeah, deadbeat
Think
con-
of,
yeah.
numerical control?
No, deadbeat control would be to say, I instantly want to eject a disturbance. So it's impossible.
It requires a lot of energy?
Well, no, it requires infinite bandwidth.
Yeah.
And because of phase lag in the system, it would always be unstable. You know, I mean, remember I had that trade-off. I mean, you all can still see it here if you would have been around. I said, increase the gain here, but make sure you don't here, where there's a lot of system uncertainty. That the phase lag in the dynamics of the grid, you know, will result in instability if you have gain here. So there's no way they do that. But, you know, well, they claim they weren't using PI, but I don't believe it. You know, I mean, so I would love to get to the bottom of this, and I've been trying for a couple of years now, and I have friends that, you know, yeah, friends that, you know, yeah. I mean, now this is a big thing that I missed. You know, I didn't miss it. I was just waiting. I didn't want to do things too quickly. So tie line errors. So we'll explain that next. All right. And this shows, you know, so I said this is a decentralized control problem. So far, I've only been talking about the balancing authority and a bunch of generators. Well, each balancing authority is connected to a bunch of other balancing authorities. And so it gets even more complex and networked. And so the tie lines are between balancing authorities. And those are also taken into account in this control problem. All right? And so I'm going to actually, I'm actually create a homework problem. We're going to actually have to model this. And it's not that bad. It's guided. Okay, so basically, you know, let's talk about this. You know, we did this, I mentioned this before, but let's look at it again. These 3 levels of control that's talked about. And this is just for fun to show you again, beautiful India. And I guess they didn't have a blackout this time. But look at this. I mean, first of all, it's amazing that Mumbai, Kanpur, and how do you pronounce that? No, nobody from India here today, but you have synchronization of frequency across the grid pretty much, and you get a disturbance and this wonderful oscillatory behavior, you know, which shows where our natural frequency is. You know, the damping ratio is definitely less than 1. You know, and you know, and it's settled down here because, you know, we're missing something. You know, we're missing it's actually secondary control to restore that frequency. But look, check that out too. I mean, the nominal frequency is supposed to be 50 hertz, and it's way up here. it's wild, you know. I mean, just.
So the primary is to stop it from drooping too low, and the secondary is to restore it back to 60. Or
Well, the primary is really that governor response, you know, and it's in the order of seconds, and I'll review that here. And it doesn't do anything about restoring the steady state frequency. And for that, you need a secondary control. I mean, it's called secondary control. You need another level of control.
But you said earlier that sometimes the control doesn't bring it back.
No, it never does. So primary alone is not designed to. It's only designed to shape the response to the system. It's basically, I mean, that's the way to conceptualize it now, is that by making sure there's governors in every generator, you've shaped the overall response of the entire grid, so the grid operator can then control it easily. That's a way to interpret it now.
So it's kind of like a consolidation in the case of emergency out of control, or in case.
Oh, not even emergency. We're shaping the dynamics. You know,
Oh, okay.
So we ended up with a grid transfer function. Well, that would be a good homework problem, actually. It just occurred to me. All the governors ended up giving you poles there and there, you know. And actually, it's terrible. I haven't done this. I'd like to take the same model and not have any governors, and I bet we'd find out they were there and there, you know. You know. Because you know, the thing is that without the governors, you get this, you know, very, very steep, much steeper undershoot when there's a jolt. And that suggests that you get very underdamped poles. I haven't done that. I don't know why. It'd be fun to work out. Maybe I'll just do it as an exercise myself and share it with you. I don't know. But definitely that's a fact. See, the governors are meant to shape the response, you know, NERC, as I said, is obsessed about how to set those droop parameters to make sure that the dynamics are okay, you know. And then you have then the balancing authority now has that row of T, that's the balancing authority there, that row of T, which is a signal sent to all those generators, they use this model, roughly, to think about how to design this compensator, you know. Yeah, hey. But so I said there's no theory for distributed control. After the fact, you can say, well, we have one. You have, first, you do local control to shape the overall response. But that's pretty weak. I mean, you know, that's not much of a theory. Yeah.
So the secondary control though will bring it back to the original frequency.
Yeah, and we're going to find you'll bring it back to its original frequency. You know, so we'll bring this back up. And the definition here is really used in so many different ways. You know, it's awful. You know, and the thing is that this used to be the only issue people cared about in the grid. I mean, loads are pretty predictable. Everything's pretty predictable. The big disaster was when a 100 megawatt generator suddenly tripped, and you get that. So that's the trouble, is that all the textbooks are written with that view in mind, that secondary control, dealing with a contingency. And if you look at now, a lot of regions of the US, that's not the issue at all.
There's like a study on like
Yeah.
how much swing you can have before it's just irreparable.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, yeah. I mean,
Talk about like, you want it between 60.5
Yeah.
and 59.5, but if it goes over, does that mean that?
well, that's another gap in this course, is voltage is often what's looked at there. It's a thing called voltage collapse, and that's very well understood about how much you can, how much under voltage you can handle before the whole system just collapses. You know, and that's, you have to take a power systems course for that, you know. I mean, really, I should mention that probably in another incarnation of this course. But in terms of frequency, I don't think there's any kind of theory like that. I mean, but
Because like any device that we have, right, that connects to a wall depends on the 60 hertz.
but that I don't think is so. I don't think I don't think we care that much.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
for like consumer products, but for like,
Yeah.
like let's say like these lighting systems, you change the frequency, like all the trips can trip.
Really?
I mean, it's possible.
Really? I don't know. I don't know what's frequency sensitive anymore, really.
It's like 61 hertz, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking. Like if it's 60, maybe 65 or 70,
I
the
don't.
voltage would go way higher. Like the offset would be zero.
Yeah.
Right? And then that
Yeah.
if everything trips, then
Yeah, I don't know any examples of loads
you
that
can't
is.
compare that.
I do know that people would be annoyed about the time. Old-fashioned clocks that actually cared about the frequency of the time you could change. But, yeah, so I don't know. That's yeah. So here's the traditional way to think about these reserves, because again, everything was about a trip. So at this time here, there's a fault. Say a big generator went out, and we've been studying this region here, like the 20-second range. So the way in which this behaves is a function of inertia, that J or M that we had, and the design of the governor. So really those shouldn't be separated like that. It's really this whole block, that whole behavior there is from that. Okay? And we've seen that that's all you do, if you lose a generator and you never put in substitute power, we've seen that this just goes to some new steady state. You know, that's what we've seen before. All right, and so I mean, so if what will happen is that the governor action will mean that the power will go up to some value. The governors they turn valves on all these generators, so all the generators are supplying more power, and it takes some time to do that. They're dynamics. It doesn't suddenly change, so it goes up. And how can it ever go down again? And that's where secondary control comes in. Okay?
Secondary control.
Secondary control, which I'll be defining.
But
Yeah.
what do you mean when you say 4 phases to recover?
Yeah. Oh, I say 3 or 4. I'll get to that. Where's my 4th again? Oh, that's right. This is silly. No. What is it again? Hold on a second. Forget that, okay? Because I can't remember right now.
I think
that's a nice second.
There's 3 any phases to
I hope
primary,
not.
secondary, and tertiary.
Well, that's stupid then, because these are coupled. These couple the dynamics of
I
the
think that's what
system.
you go with 3 or 4.
Yeah, maybe so. I wrote that a year ago, and at 2 in the morning. I don't remember now. Sorry. Sorry about that. But it really is 3. I mean, this is the way. In any power systems book, you'll see these 3 things. Okay, and so yeah. So let's define these.
The bottom graph, right, is showing that when the fault immediately happens, you're going to ramp up generators.
Yeah, that's all local control. The generators ramp up. Not as quick as possible, though. You know, it's very carefully designed.
Okay,
There's
okay.
droop gain constants
But quicker
are
than
set,
other controls.
but quick on the order of seconds. That's right.
Then as
Yeah.
it goes down, the secondary,
Well,
secondary starts.
there's a replacement now. So, you know, those generators, you know, go back to the scheduled values, and there's other generators that, you know, other power that comes online. You know, well, I'm jumping ahead of myself a bit, but both the generators that were that went up because of governor action, now they're also going up because they got a signal from the balancing authority.
Right.
And there might be other spinning reserves we talked about that suddenly now are connected to the grid, and they're ramping up, depending on how much generation is lost.
So is there like a correlation between like primary response and which generators to use, like high output or would you want like smaller generators because their starter time is smaller than it would be for like
Wait for, I mean,
so like primary
Yeah.
response, right? You said you ramp up local generators, but would those be like on 100 kilowatts?
oh no, but this is all, every generator, not every generator, but most generators are equipped with governors that can receive a signal from the balancing authority. And they receive this rho of t scaled, you know, by the capacity, a constant times the capacity. So it's all the generators, you know, virtually all the generators are participating here. Obviously not the biomass plants, and you know, but even there's even synthetic governor action in some wind turbines in solar, you know, from storage and power electronics.
This is,
Yeah.
this scenario assuming that the generator wasn't running before the fault.
No, these are all, governor action, remember by definition, is generators that are running, and they're looking at the local frequency, and they're ramping up and down their power consumption based on a droop parameter, based on, you know.
So they were already running, and the minute of the
Yeah.
fault, they were trying to adjust the grid.
Yeah, this is all about governors that we've been discussing. You know, that's all about. And it's just, this is what would happen if there's a fault, because the frequency would suddenly become negative, which by the definition, the governor action would make them all ramp up to some value. And if without these other control efforts, they would all then just go up by some percentage, and that would be it. And you'd get a persistent deviation in frequency forever, until the next event.
Yeah, but you're not just like a new frequency.
Yeah.
Everyone balances.
Yeah, that's right. But so you need a central coordinator to go in and then redo things. And then, yeah, there's a fact of who's available. So you've got these responsive generators who have to either ramp up, or they were maybe spinning but not connected. They hook up and ramp up. But potentially they're expensive. So that's why we've got that. So these generators, you know, maybe this is hours. You know, they got the call, but they had to come in and then, you know, hours later they can start ramping up. And they're replacing. So the secondary goes down, the tertiary goes up, because these guys are cheaper than these guys. So this is a solution to a new economic dispatch problem, to decide who gets to come on over here. Yeah.
I basically
Yeah.
see this as an application where the generator speed is a factor.
Well, definitely here, that's all right there. Absolutely. So these guys might be expensive as hell, but they can be out there, you know, they can just hook up and go, you know. Yeah.
Well, primary is just more quantity than quality, is that what it is?
Well, no, remember, primary is what we've been doing all along. That's just that local feedback loop in every generator.
Right, but,
Yeah.
but that's at almost every generator.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
on like a national
Yeah.
scale, this is
Yeah.
sort of like a national.
Yeah, well, no, this is for balancing authority right here.
Well, so like a
Yeah.
balancing authority,
Yeah.
what would be like an example?
Well, remember, yeah. So I'll show you pictures again. This is hilarious. Yeah, I've got pictures there. So yeah, so we've said this already, but let's just say it. So anyway, this is what you guys can look up when you need it. This is actually stolen from a NERC manual. I've got a link somewhere else. But again, the main thing is that Primer again is based on local control, local frequency measurements. And in the NERC manual, it says 10 to 30 seconds. I think it's a bit faster than that. I mean, it's real time. There's a deadband, so it ignores it for a while. So that counts for a few seconds. So the reason here there's a fault, and there should be a couple of seconds delay. So there's a deadband. They do nothing, and they start to they ignore the frequency deviation until it's outside of some limit.
What does that do?
It's
Just do it for fun?
Yeah. I'm trying not to use jargon.
We use jargon, I think.
Yeah. They don't want to be harassed. The generators don't want to be moving up and down. It's a term called hunting, which I can't stand. But it allows the generators to just operate at a discrete constant spot and not have to move up and down, unless it really matters.
So you think that's delayed to...
It doesn't cost anything. No, it's just the fact it means they do a lot more moving of their set points, a lot less movement of their set points.
So is it effectively filter out like some high frequency points, or?
Yeah, well, it's a very nonlinear effect, so it's hard to think about it in terms of frequency, But it's basically, we don't care anyway if it's, if it's such a small percentage. It's almost out of batteries again. It's flashing here, but. Yeah. Well, I think it's partly, so Neil believes you can recharge alkaline batteries.
They have to be like rechargeable batteries.
These are rechargeable.
Chargers do, but they don't work well with these batteries.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think
I've had success before.
We might as well swap out.
you charge alkaline.
But that's the thing. So here's the thing we're talking about now, is that there's a secondary reserve. Again, it's the balancing authority comes in, and the purpose here is to restore power balance in a control area. And remember, look at this language. Primary frequency reserve. I mean, these are control algorithms, damn it, And here they're doing this blah blah blah. It's PI control or something, or I don't know. This language kills me, but anyway, it's not a reserve. It's the balancing authority's action of restoring the power balance in a control area. This is the official language, okay, from NERC and all. And so you're trying to get the frequency back to where it was, and this is again, magnitude of minutes, but up to an hour or so. That's an hour, something like that. And so AGC is an example in a way. I mean, because again, the language isn't even constant. I'll show you why. And this tertiary reserve, and this is a long paragraph I won't read. You can look at it if you want. But it's replacement, damn it. It's just getting this expensive stuff here and replacing by something cheaper. So that's it. But so crisis aversion and reallocation of resources is what's being emphasized here, emphasized in the book. And again, that's just one role of the grid operator. And in places like California and New York, it's much less of a role than it used to be. I mean, basically, it's in Texas, my God. I mean, the wind, how many gigawatts is it again? Was it 20 or something?
Yeah, I think.
Jesus Christ. I mean, it's like half the load of Texas. And
Cali?
what?
California?
No, Texas is much more. Texas is the green state. Yeah. I mean, California's only got a few gigawatts. And Texas,
5, I think.
yeah, Texas has got, I think, 4 times California in the west. But all the population's in the east. And it's incredibly volatile. They've got transmission issues. And so the balancing authority, ERCOT's job is really exciting. It's, and that's what's sort of fun right now. It's a playground for control engineers because they really need help.
So would you say the tertiary response would probably be more of renewable energy? Because then, like, I remember, like, when the guy from the vice president, ex-vice president of Google came.
Of energy. He headed the energy division.
Right, energy,
yeah, Arun Majumdar.
He was talking about how, like, it's getting cheaper and cheaper to use renewable energy.
Yeah.
Even to the point where it's cheaper than coal.
Yeah.
It's just volatile, but in tertiary type takes like what?
No, but tertiary is just a replacement. So it's this, this diagram only applies to a outage. I've got a generator outage, and how do I replace that power? So at this point here, say a 100 megawatt generator tripped, and at the end here, I've replaced that 100 megawatts somehow. Maybe with another generator, maybe by ramping up a few generators. And so there's an economic dispatch problem there.
Could you use reserves then, like actual like?
Well, that's what's being used here. Yeah, I mean, you've got spinning reserves and you've got generators online.
What about like batteries?
Well, you could use. Well, the trouble is you've got energy there, right? So, you had 100 megawatts there. It was running, and then if you replace this with batteries, you'd have now 100 megawatts coming out of a battery, running. Well, no way. Now, that's the worst application of batteries.
Really? Because couldn't they use a battery while they fix it?
Well, we'll come to that. We'll come to that, and the answer is no way. So for this is all about generation. I mean, if I had 100 megawatts here generation, I had a reason for that 100 megawatts. For using generators and not batteries, and I'll have the same reason here. Whatever justified me having a 100 megawatt generator there, I'll have the same justification there. Yeah. But so the thing is that most of the things that we care about today are zero energy services, and at least in the places that are really having crises right now. Germany is in crisis. Northwest of the U.S., California, Texas is going to have real crisis coming up. And a lot of their issues are zero energy. Nothing to do with this plot at all. Not a single loss of 100 megawatts. It's this regulation problem. And I just can't, the language is so confusing. I don't expect you to memorize all this stuff. Just know that when you go and talk to somebody in power and you use the word regulation, they won't know what you're talking about. There's a different meaning in different contexts. And you can look at the most recent NERC manual, and it contradicts with other manuals. So it drives me crazy. And so I can give you a source of this. But so this is something I showed you before from NREL and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and I think they're wrong. So we're looking at frequency responsive reserves and regulating reserves and ramping services, load following, supplementary, and this is a recent NREL document, and they've got this frequency responsive reserves on the area of seconds, and they put AGC only there, and then this business about upward regulation and downward regulation. And it makes me want to scream. It means that I'm going to have one resource for going up and another resource for going down. And that point of view has created market rules in California and the Midwest. I'm going to have an auction for that and another auction for that. Separate markets. It's reality. I mean, it's that crazy.
What do you mean market rules?
A market.
For wait, so...
I got $50 for that. 25 bucks sold, 20 bucks for that. Okay, let's do the other one. 80, do I hear 60? 60, yeah, 60 bucks for that. They do. They do. It's effing insane. It is absolutely insane.
So they're giving them money
to ramp down, and there's a big value to that. I mean, these are ailerons, right? And ailerons go up and down in planes, and there's a value of ramping up, and there's a value to ramping down.
Turn off generators.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that happens today. We've seen the negative prices, right? So negative prices means that I will get paid if I turn off my generator. Because I'm paying as I generate. You know? The LMPs, remember, we get negative prices all the time. I mean, it was beautiful. I can show you a screenshot. MISO was beautiful yesterday. It was just, you know, it comes out. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's just that when I open up my browser, my three favorite ISOs pop up, and so if it's really pretty, I'll do a screenshot. You know. So anyway, I mean, it's very, very frustrating. But but we know what a lot of you should know what a lot of these things are. I mean, spinning reserves, again, generators that are spinning but not connected. And there's a real issue of how you connect them. And my God, they've got to be synchronized almost exactly when they hook up, you know. And then non-spinning reserves, they might be very, you know, they're there to provide that tertiary service, you know. And they might be very efficient, but which means it'll take a lot of time to get online. You know. And then you know, what's called contingency reserves, you know, are like, you know, I mean, I don't know why there's a second category, but anyway, forget it. But so here they define balancing reserves, you know, and they don't include AGC, and they say it's fast minutes to hours. I don't know if that's accurate. You know, I just don't know. So, and they don't even include a lot of this as part of secondary reserves, when of course it is. It's the, you know, it's the balancing. Anything between seconds and minutes is about the continuous balancing of frequency, making sure it's settled. So the language is horrible. I just want you to be aware of that. So there's a paper here I'm going to make you all read. I'm going to have a homework assignment to force you to read it. It's awesome. Kirby has a few papers that are fantastic tutorials. And again, we've seen this a million times, but this is what's called balancing reserves in BPA, and it has all frequencies, really. And the main thing to note is that this is everything. So at BPA, don't ever forget this. Their balancing reserves are like, it's sort of all the regulation that we've talked, that's up there. Automatic generation control with this rho of T, and the real-time market. You know, so you'll hear people at the ISO say, BP has a mess. We don't have any huge signals like this. Our regulation signals are only, you know, they're not 400 megawatts. They're only at 50 megawatts. But they don't realize that they don't have a real-time market. They're doing it all through control. It's awesome. And everyone else has got it wrong. So, you know, PGM, New York ISO, ERCOT, they're doing it wrong. This is how it should be done. You've got a feedback loop, and you ramp up energy generators up and down to provide the real-time control. It's so efficient. They don't have a market for ramping up and a separate market for ramping down. You know, they don't have an auction every 5 minutes they have to settle, and prices going from negative something to 10,000. They recognize it's a feedback control loop and do it. It's amazing to me. I just, you know, this is a BPA. That's Pacific Northwest. And they get a lot of heat for this because it's not based on firm economic principles. It's based on control theory.
Right.
It's incredible, you know. It's incredible, yeah.
Wait, so because of that, the error signal, they're able to keep it balanced.
Well, no, I mean, this is just for reality. I mean, the fact is that, I'll show these two plots I showed you before, but it's just to show how the balancing signal that they send out to generators varies on a day with no wind compared to a day with a lot of wind.
So that this ISO,
and it's not, you know,
they have constant prices for their.
Yeah, they don't have anything like what's done in the rest of, you know.
But they're just less profitable.
Oh, well, no, you see, the people who are in charge of the people in charge of, like the ISOs or the balancing authorities, are not supposed to be in the money-making business. They're just the arbitrary. They're just like they run auctions. They make sure ensure reliability, and this is an old-fashioned quote unquote structure where generators lobby the Public Utility Commission to build new generation, and they get to increase their rates if they do sufficient investment. So you don't have auctions in that part of the country. It's only, I think
So like,
you
I'm
know,
trying to think of like what are the advantages then of having a real-time market
None.
besides profitability?
none. I mean,
Like the only reason I can see you want real-time market is because the ISOs can just profit with crazy amounts of money. That one is
well, it's just, it's what's called the Austrian School of Economics, Hayek, and there's just this fantasy about how selfish individuals will optimize a system, you know, if they're allowed to. You know, basically, if you break down, you know, what's called, you know, the barriers to competition, then you will self-equilibrate to the most efficient outcome. And there's a million papers that prove this, you know. And by, you know, Arrow and Coase is referenced very often, and Hayek, and you know, first of all, they have this assumption of what's efficient, which I think is ridiculous, and I think it's impossible to justify. And two, equilibrium. What the hell are you talking about? Where is an equilibrium here? You know, it's just, you know, when you're talking about, but the thing is that economists, you know, mathematical economists are in love with this theory, and they end up promoting it, and you end up with these crazy market rules. So it was amazing to me to read this paper where he seems to be quoting me. I've been saying this for years. And the thing is that you're right, that there are some parties that can make money from volatility, and I'm sure that they pay the big consulting fees to a lot of these economists who then go and help to lobby for policy. I mean, definitely Wall Street makes a lot of money from volatility. That's what they do. Goldman Sachs makes money on insurance in a sense. And so they love this, you know. I mean, not this is control. They love volatile prices because they can sell insurance. But here's the thing. So the balancing reserves, according to the sources I have, it's not just frequency deviation. It's a sum of everything. They sum up the error forecasts from the wind generation. They sum up frequency deviation. They sum up tie line errors. You know, the error. Well, I'll define that formally in a moment. And when we did some studies ourselves to look at the wind forecast error and compare it to this, it was almost the same. So this is mainly, you know, you could see it's not all because there's no wind here, but a lot of this is just the error forecasts in the wind. And they claim they just send that raw signal to the generators to ramp up and down. Strange. Okay, so this is the thing that cracked me up because in today's lecture you had the same plot, and so just remember that you've got these two things. You've got NERC and FERC, you know, and NERC, what is it here? The National Energy Regulatory Corporation, I guess. You can click there. Anything underlined, you can click, and they have their, you know, reliability regions, you know, and they say the droop gain has to be such and such, and that you can't have so much tie line error per year, and things like that.
So they also regulate in Canada as well?
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, this is all Canada. And isn't it amazing that you've got some that actually go across the borders? It's remarkable, isn't it? And look, and I didn't realize WEC went all the way up into BC and all that. Isn't that cool? I didn't realize that WEC was everything. In fact, I didn't even know that WEC got to be on top of California ISO.
So that's in Mexico too.
Oh my God, there's a bit of Mexico. I didn't even see that. Whoa. In fact, they get a bit of Sinaloa, you know, it's like, I don't know how you regulate them. And so, you know, FERC granted NERC the authority to set standards. I'm not going to read this to you, but if you want to read it, and again, this is underlined, so if you really, if you have insomnia, you can read about this history, but this is how confusing it is. And I got it right, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation.
FERC is a corporation.
Well, whatever the hell that means, because in today's lecture, this guy obviously knew what he was talking about, but he claimed that these ISOs are nonprofits. But Terry Boston has told me, no, check out our website. We're an LLC, a limited liability corporation. And the CEO paychecks are quite large, I'm sure. Terry Boston's the CEO of PJM. So they're not non-profit, even though people think they are, which is really funny. They're for-profit. I don't know they must be highly, highly regulated because they could make a lot of money. They've got a lot of power. But this is a thing. I mean, check it out. I mean, this is now called Mid-Continent ISO. I often forget and call it Midwestern ISO, what it used to be called. But look how it stretches all the way up into Canada as well, and way down here, and even gets into ERCOT. It takes over a bit of, so Mid-Continent ISO breaks into Texas. So Texas is not as sovereign as they think they are. But this is very, very different. So these are people, these are NERC coordinating councils who set rules that all the balancing authorities have to set. You've got these ISOs, and PJM for some reason calls themselves an RTO. An ISO is Independent Systems Operator, they're a regional transmission operator. It's the same thing, there's no difference. And they're really balancing authorities. So ERCOT runs the auctions here and takes care of all those reliability issues and sets everything. Southwest Power Pool only became a ISO last year, or maybe the year before, I don't know. And then still we've got these wonderful green areas that are keeping out of this idiotic system, and there's a lot more freedom in those systems. Here, you have to have those stupid markets with 5-minute auctions. Not here, I mean in the United States. If you're under the jurisdiction of FERC, you have so many restrictions on how you can set up your markets, and particularly those crazy auctions.
So BPA is not an ISO?
No, not BPA is up here. It's a large balancing authority in the Pacific Northwest.
So would you consider like FPNL?
FPNL is a balancing authority here, and GRU is a tiny little balancing authority. They've got a little tiny control room. They've actually got a beautiful control room.
I've been inside.
Yeah. And it's a micro balancing authority, and you've got Duke and Southern up here and all of that.
There's a Tampa.
Yeah, that's right. There's OUC has it's a micro.
There's like a Tampa one too.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
It's like Turk or something.
Yeah. What's that? I don't know. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and this is a mistake putting all these together. But yeah, so anyway, and so you can see the confusion when you go. They call these things balancing authorities, but balancing authorities have different meanings in different contexts. So even the NERC calls that a balancing authority. It's not. They should not use that language. It's one of these. It's a blah 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 coordinating council. So okay, so the big thing is that not here, between all the little balancing authorities, there are tie lines, and that's the next thing that was missing. All right. And this is something that I really regret. I didn't talk about DC power flow equations and all that. I'm gonna, again, I'll have a few lectures at the end that will be mandatory. I mean, not mandatory, optional. And so we've seen this, but let's just look at it again. I mean, we've talked about different areas, but now these areas are like FPNL and GRU. There's a balancing authority that's in charge of all these generators and sending regulation signals to each one. And there's one over here. And there's power flows that go between the two. And the thing is, that means that money is flowing from one place to another. Now that might have been scheduled, that might be right, but maybe it's more than scheduled, maybe it's less. And so you got to put tight control on that, because that's, we don't want to give away power. These generators.
Transmission constraints.
What's that? No, it's nothing to do with transmission constraints. No, nothing about that. It's about money. There was a huge auction that went about, and the power produced here, there was an economic dispatch problem, and there was a scheduled power going from here to here, and there were settlements to utility companies and generators based on those auctions. And if suddenly this is more than expected, let's say there's much more than scheduled going this direction, then this balancing authority is going to profit from that error, and they'll be losers, you know, is the region. You know?
Do ISOs ever trade power with each other?
And that is balancing authorities. Yes, so they do. So they allow power flows to go through, and out, you know, the details of the settlement will depend on the place.
We consider the line in the middle, which is the transmission line, like the main grid. Possibly that grid somehow is connected.
No, these are all, it's right, actually, let's go back here again. Like, these little guys, think of them as balancing authorities, you know?
Yes.
There's GRU, you know? And actually that would be floating power and light, you know? And so we've got all these guys sandwiched together. Now, you have to go back, all of PJM is one massive balancing authority, and they have tie lines here. So for them, it's not quite as complex. They've got tie lines here, and tie lines
You
over
want to
here.
say that connection is not really direct, but at the end of the day, they're connected together.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's direct. No, that's direct. See, direct.
But if this is true, it's going to be difficult to calculate how much.
Oh, they do. They measure it. They measure it.
Generated, how much.
They measure it. They compute these things every 5 minutes. They compute the optimal power flow and how much is flowing through every line, and they know everything. Yeah. It's something else, and it's so yes, this is part of the economic dispatch problem, but now it's on a grander scale. We're just talking about these big balancing authorities, and they need to take this into account. And it's part of the NERC requirements that they have to deal with these tie line errors. And they've come up with some, very specific ways to deal with it. And it's a whole other layer to the control that we left out, to simplify things. So here it is. So ACE. Repeat yourself each night. ACE, area control error. So it's what the balancing authority, NERC says, you must control ACE. So that's a NERC rule. And you can't imagine how they define small. Layers and layers of metrics to define small. It's a hard thing because
Do they find them? Is how do they like?
they'll find them. They'll find them.
That's like their move.
They have a stick. And it's a bit like ABET is for us professors. We have all these rules. They're incredibly complex, and they get monitored every several years, and the big fear is we'll lose our accreditation.
Yeah.
And it does happen, Yeah. So
Good schools will lose that.
and so we spend a lot of time, trying to deal with these metrics that often look artificial, but that's life. So anyway, those are the two things. We've got the deviation that we've been obsessed with for the last few weeks, but there's a second thing as well, which is the tie line flow. It's the difference between the scheduled flow from the economic dispatch and the actual flow. That's how it's defined. So there was some flow already. Obviously, GRU has a big flow from cheaper sources. They don't have these very efficient generated sources like our neighbors. And why should they? Do you think anyone in Alachua is going to settle for one of these massive power plants? Maybe somewhere Alachua far away. I don't know. But it's a tiny place. It's a tiny place. And FPNL has a lot of land, places that nobody cares about,
Right.
and they can plop down a $1 billion power plant.
And they kind of have like a
Yeah.
monopoly on the government, like I saw before. I feel like.
Well, that's true too. You forget all that. There's also politics. Yeah. That's, who plays golf with who?
Right.
God, we should not be recording these. But that's life.
Just keep my face
That's
out.
how it works. No, it's me. Okay, but there.
Famous.
Yeah.
Deep
What
throat.
do you want?
Deep throat.
But so there's the definition. So there's the actual power flow between me and all of my neighbors, and the scheduled power flow from me to all of my neighbors, and something called the bias times delta omega that we've looked at. And and so there it is. So the NERC says you must regulate this to 0. And so does it mean that all of our work it was a waste of time? Because
So B is just a factor of frequency difference.
It's just a constant. It's just some, I don't know what this number is. It's sort of meaningless what it is. But there's every different region will have a different constant based on, And it's strange to take the sum, isn't it? I mean, it works. It all works. But it is strange at first sight. You think, this could go to 1 million, that could go to minus 1 million, and everything. You get a perfect score. And that's why it is complex when trying to measure this. I mean, you can't, taking just the sum alone. They really don't just take the sum when they monitor performance. They look at your frequency performance as well separately. But the fact that you have to really have two objectives. You want to keep the tie line error small, and you want to keep frequency deviation small. You've got two objectives. It means you really would like 2 degrees of freedom for control, ideally. And you'd like more degrees of freedom for control, rather than just that single, scalar, signal sent to the generators. Okay, so there it is. So there's our new thing. It's not that different than what we had before. So they've got 2 measurements now instead of 1. They've got, you've got the bell. Yeah. So, I've got to redo this figure. I stole this from from ETH, Switzerland. So I'm going to change this figure. It should say what's a mistake in this figure? ETH, you blew it. What should this say? In terms of at least this course so far.
What? ACE?
Yeah. Well, see, the thing is that this is correct. I take. Well, what I'm saying is this: that I calculate A's based on the tie line error and a constant times delta frequency, and that's true. So I'll take the tie line error, which is the flow, and I'm gonna take I'm missing a delta as well. Take that, and the balancing authority is computing A's, and the balancing authority is then it can send a command. So I need my row of T there. I need a row 2 of T here and a row 1 of T here to send signals to the generators, to get them to change their behavior. So
we're missing the balancing.
We're missing the balancing authority. That's right. It just occurred to me the second, and that's what's going to happen. Is what's going to be different. Now, why do I really regret? Last night, in the middle of the night, I was thinking, shit, I skipped all the slides on DC power flow because I'm still not sure what time in this course. We need a model of the interconnection. And this transmission line might be quite long, and so we really do need a model of the tie line dynamics.
Internal resistance of
Well, it's even simpler than that, actually. Even without resistance, there's some issues, And it has to do with when you have. See, the thing is, this is just 2, so it's trivial. But when you have 3, it's different. It's not trivial. And remember the examples where I showed you the lack of uniqueness, for example, of equilibrium and all that. I showed you the beautiful colored plots. With 2, it's nothing, but with 3, it's an issue. And we're not talking about 3; we're talking about a whole network. So you really, in order to do the control now, you have to augment that model that we derived last time a little bit. And so the next Homer problem you're going to do is just to do that. It's not a big deal. It's a little tweak on what we did already, right? And so you can still do the same thing. So they're going to use a PI compensator in the same way. But it's a bit funky again because their measurement now is a sum of 2 things. You need the transfer function from like a change in load to ACE, because that's the thing you're trying to regulate. And that's a bit wild. But fortunately, dynamics are pretty much like a static gain of the frequencies you care about. So the point of view is going to be the same. You're going to suppress gain at high frequencies and high gain at low frequencies because your model is going to be pretty much just a static gain over a certain frequency range. And this is actually this is what these signals look like. Now, so So really I need to put an I here now. That's the only change in our picture. So instead of a delta omega coming in here for the balancing authority, now it's A's. But what we're going to find is that actually they go through and they take that and they break it up now into all sorts of other signals. And so they decompose this. And the word frequency is so confusing. I'll put in quotes to emphasize that. What I mean is frequency, that's a fast frequency. So not frequency, grid frequency. I'm talking about how much does it oscillate up and down. So PJM has this reg D signal, that dynamic regulation signal.
So you're saying frequencies and like
How much it moves.
should we just call it volatility then?
I guess so. But they really do use high frequency, high pass filters. It's so damn confusing. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. Yeah. But here you're forced with that because so PJM has this, and we're going to understand why they came up with it. It's very new, just in the last 4 years. They have what they call the Reg D signal, which is the highest frequency. It has the most. It's not most volatility. It's the least volatile. It's the smallest, but it moves up and down the most. But you look out, that's fast movement. But in 10 minutes, it just comes down and goes back up again. So the time scales are very slow. It's So remember, my plot was over 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, not very much happens. Yeah.
What? This is like a house or
What's that?
why is the power scale?
Oh, yeah. No, it's irrelevant because it depends on the unit. I mean, this thing will be scaled according to the unit.
Okay.
No, this is from a paper. I'll explain this in a few weeks. This is from a paper in which we wanted to sell. Well, I'll jump ahead. So in a few lectures, I can explain how University of Florida could be providing this signal through buildings. And so this is an example of taking one fan in a commercial building and ramping up and down its power consumption to track a Reg D signal. And so the kilowatt was because it was one fan, one kilowatt
So
fan.
like a very small scale appliance.
Well, one fan in a commercial building. But you've got gigawatts and gigawatts of power consumption. So you can put these things together. So I'll talk about that in a bit. So batteries could do this beautiful. And as soon as PJM came up with their Reg D a signal, a market for Reg D, battery companies went nuts. So Saft in Jacksonville, battery company, their production went up like crazy to selling batteries for PJM. And so they did this because of FERC. So I mentioned FERC 745, where loads could participate in the real-time market. There's something called FERC, or another FERC order.
This all makes sense now. I understand what that means. Okay.
Federal Energy Regulatory Application, but they came up with the wackiest order ever, but by mistake, it's poetry, it works. And so I'll have to explain that. But they came up with these very strange orders, and they, just by luck, they actually incentivized all sorts of new technology. But it mandated payments, which we'll talk about later on. And so PJM came up with this Reg D signal to protect themselves, because they wanted to exclude a lot of parties from getting into this. So they put so many rules on the signal that very few players could actually pretend they could provide it. So basically exclude everybody but battery companies and flywheels and that. So it's a very, very small part of the regulation part. So they have a Reg D in PJM. They have this Reg D, and they have a Reg A, which is much bigger. And the rules for Reg D are very, very stringent. For Reg A, not so much. All right? Skip a break. No break. We don't need a break. We'll be done. We'll be done earlier. But so so the thing is that the FERC order, again, we'll talk about later on, says that you have to have some sort of payments for more faster generation. Do I say it here? Well, I don't know. I'll give the history in another lecture. But there's the first FERC order only said you had to have a payment for how much you moved up and down, but nothing about accuracy. And later FERC orders said, well, you got to be accurate as well. You know, but the payments rules was so high that it would have put these guys out of business. And so that's why FERC, PJM put in lots and lots of rules to make sure only a small number of players could provide the service.
So then PJM only commissions big utilities in the area?
No, PJM, you know, is a gigantic ISO for a huge part of the eastern U.S., and they need that row of T. And FERC has said, you must give payments for accuracy. And PJM's response is says, okay, I'll take a little sliver of that and call it Reg D, and I'll pay for performance and how much, you know, and movement. But these guys, I won't do it. I won't pay for it. Give those incentives for these guys.
So then Reg D is composed of less.
It's a much smaller total up and down movement. You know, it's higher frequency. You know, and they're not that high, much higher. But there's very stringent rules here on accuracy, correlation, precision, blah blah blah,
So
and not so much here.
High, like just more, the better generators.
Well, but the generator's actually excluded. It's so stringent that generators can't even do it. So battery companies went nuts, you know, and just filled this up, and it's over. So there was a big bonanza. Battery companies came in and set themselves up.
So they can offer the precision.
Yeah.
by using
Batteries are awesome, but not as awesome as what we'll talk about soon. You know, I think loads, you know, flexible loads could do better. I think we'll talk about that. You know, I think that demand response, not demand response, but flexibility of loads could do a better job at tracking Reg D than batteries probably, and much more cheaply. You know.
When you say flexibility of loads, do you mean like the ability for a load to be able to take less or more?
Yeah, right there. So right now unfortunately it's so noisy, it's scary.
It is air conditioning.
Yeah, but the thing is that noise pollution is my only fear. But you've got an amazing amount of energy being used just moving air in buildings. And you could increase it by 10%, decrease it by 10%. You know, increase it for 2 minutes, 10%, decrease it for 1 minute, 10%, increase it for several minutes. So we've done lots of experiments on a building here. And it's not trivial to make this work. So we'll talk about that later. There's some
It would
issues.
just require like internal control for every device that wants to do this.
But it's already there. So we'll talk about that
also
later.
exists.
It's already there. Well, I mean, every building already has control loops. This building, as old as decrepit as it is, has control loops like a airplane or a car. And so it's already there. But this is fun. But again, at first sight, well, so when I first saw this, I thought I was going to get rich. I mean, because I thought that we could market this stuff we were doing to them. But now I know that it's such a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of the puzzle to get it there, bigger fish to fry, which we'll talk about. Okay. So here again is our overall grid now, and exactly all the things we've talked about. So you can it's useful. There's a where is it? Somewhere you'll see a click. You can get a link to this, and it's really nice. It's very in line with this course, and this is the overall picture. Okay, and yeah. Okay, so this is quite nice to see now. So basically this is from ERCOT several years ago, and you see the time scale here. That's 2 hours and 2 more hours. And you've got ACE is the green thing, and blue is this deployed regulation, that row of T. So I've got ACE coming in, row of T going out, and so does that look consistent to you?
blue?
Yeah, in the green.
Volatile,
What?
highly volatile.
This is highly volatile, that's not. You know? Because remember, every compensator is a low-pass filter. I mean, I don't know any application of control where this isn't just a low-pass filter. And a PI controller is a low-pass filter. And it's high gain at low frequencies, low gain at high frequencies. So you're putting the A signal through a low-pass filter, you expect to get that. And you get long excursions like that because you're integrating the error. When you integrate something, you know, you can expect it to go up a lot because obviously there was some persistent positivity there, you know. That's it. So or negativity, I don't know if the signs are right. And that's what you're seeing today. So that's, you know, that's what's going on. And damn it, these are secondary control as well. And this is trying to keep the frequency regulated, you know. Yeah, but and it is called AGC all over the place. Even if NREL doesn't call it that, other control engineers do. And so that's the refinement of our control loop. You measure ACE now, that's a measurement. Put it through a low-pass filter, we get that. And our model of the grid, it changes. I should change this because of tie line errors. There's a slight change to our model of the grid. Yeah. All right. Cool. So does it work? So this is the last, that's why I don't want to break, because it's not, you know, we're not going to go through any designs now, because nothing's going to change very much. But we've got this control loop now. We've got the plant, actuators of generators and batteries, and the grid with all sorts of disturbances, including because of your damn neighbors. You know, yeah, that's right. I mean, whether this is the grid or balancing authority depends. Yeah, this hides that incredibly, you know, this hierarchical control structure where you've got individual generators, and then you've got a balancing authority, and the balancing authorities are networked together to form the entire grid of North America. And, you know, I mean, it's wild. There's millions of loops. It's, you know, yeah. What? Oh, where's that?
Balancing authority.
Oh, where is that?
All right. Blue box.
All right, that's funny. Yeah, it's probably, yeah. I have to check that. Actually, I want to Neil, remind me to change this completely. It ruins the whole beauty of this. I mean, again, you know, you've got, okay, so a symbol of a control loop is that, okay, because I can't fit it all in. So you've got the generators with their own little control loops, you know, and then you've got the balancing authority with its big control loop, and then you've got those linked to all the other guys, you know. So it's this crazy hierarchical control structure, and forget modeling now. I mean, if you really want to model the whole you know, all of North America, I mean, I challenge you. Some people have tried. My God, so the grid here is pretty damn complex. So we come up with a micro model for a governor, then we come up with a micro model for a balancing authority, then we come up with a micro model for one balancing authority connected to three others, ignoring the rest of the universe. But eventually, the other universe does exist, and they're all coupled. So it's.
You think there would be a time where all balancing authorities are under one corporation, so all the control loops are.
I don't know if it's a good thing. I like this sort of hierarchical control structure. I think it's pretty awesome.
I'm saying like hierarchical, yeah, but like you're saying that the balance authority between two balancing authorities, they might have different control loops.
Yeah.
Right, and that could potentially.
Yeah, well, I mean,
noise too.
it could. I mean, I wish there was a science for this. I wish to God there was a science for really.
All uniform, right?
No, not necessarily. I don't know what the best. You know, I don't know if a uniform is what you want. I don't know. I mean, yeah.
It's like crazy because it's like.
Yeah. Well, that came from evolution.
How does it all start? still work.
I know, I love it. It's
Still all get
to me, it's beautiful. I mean, the fact that they cook these things up and it works is amazing. I love it. Well, this is no science at all.
Well, I'm saying like electricity only has to be at 60 hertz.
Yeah.
120 volts. That's all we need.
Yeah,
Everything else is up to them. So.
yeah. I mean, I'll give you a hint. It's the kind of science people have tried to use to get a picture. Because it is true that so there's a disturbance in Florida. Suppose that one of these gigawatt things trips. There'll be some disturbance, and it'll go to Quebec and bounce back. There'll be a phase wave off to Quebec. It'll come back. It'll oscillate all the way to Quebec and back to Florida. You know, it's gorgeous. You know, it's a.
It's destructive.
Now here's the amazing thing. So remember, I said we needed a robust control design because there's uncertainty in grid dynamics. You know, and you can imagine the uncertainty is part of this complexity. But get a load of this. So this is from this paper by Kirby. So here's two generators. They're coal-fired generators, and the red is the requested regulation, and the blue is what's actually provided. And so the requested generation, you know, is, I don't know why they're being so mean, but that's it. That's an hour, and you can see, you know, this looks consistent with what I showed you before. That it's not, you know, it's ACE put through a low-pass filter. This is the other generator. Look at that. It's being asked to go up, but it's going down. It's massive, and what that is so again, the requested generation is there, and there's a phase lag there of many, you know, of 20 minutes or something. That phase lag is damn scary. I mean, you know, remember we're scared of phase lag? And they're introducing 90 degrees of phase lag in their response. If everybody acted like that, boom, the grid would blow up. And basically, they're asked to do this crazy stuff, and they're just opting out. They're not doing it. You know, and so well, I don't know. They're not being hit hard enough with fines. That might be part of it. They should not be allowed. This is several years old.
Well, the generators are so just like very.
Well, coal generators are not a good resource regulation. You know, they tend to be, you know, slower ramping up and down. They already are horrible polluters, and it makes them pollute more. They shouldn't be in the game anyway. But this is how it's been forever, and so the system's robust enough to handle that kind of disturbance, which is pretty amazing.
Was one of the lenses also coal-fired one?
They're both coal-fired power plants, and they're similar technology, and one is doing okay. You know, look at, I mean, not great. They're giving way more than they were asked. I mean, that could be a bad thing. But this guy, you know, is crazy. It's just, and what you'll see is, I mean, you'll see crazy things happen. I mean, you definitely want to go to the FNet link sometimes and see, this is just phase in different parts of the US and how it'll very, very quickly change. And and this question here is just for you to ponder. The tie line term, it's actually, this is badly placed. I should have said this earlier, but it's not just with flow accounts. It is a control issue. And again, that's because when the balancing authority takes into account the flows, their model does change, you know, and you are trying to regulate the whole grid. You know, we're trying to keep the frequency, not just the frequency, but the phase constant throughout the grid. The phase constant. I mean, it amazes me. This color is the phase. Isn't it? Oh no, this is frequency. Next one's frequency. No, it's the wrong plot. I'm sorry. This is frequency. I take it back. That red there is 60.02. And the blue is 59.994. Sorry, but if you go to FNet and look at their phase, it's similar. It's very, very gradual changes. And so you're trying to just keep that constant. And look how constant it is. It's just fantastic. And so of course, ERCOT's separate because they've got tie lines, DC tie lines to insulate themselves. And WEC has DC tie lines from here. And did I tell you all why WEC has DC historically? It has to do with the Rocky Mountains. and the problems of getting transmission lines over the mountains, just the altitudes and all that. They had problems with conductivity. I guess there's actually better conductivity at the very, very high altitudes. And so you have more dangers of sparking in the Rockies and all that. So the solution was just to put in just insulate WEC from the rest of the country. So there is control value. And this is a really fun paper that somebody should follow up on, of trying to get an understanding of what happens when you have a disturbance in Florida and it propagates to Quebec and back. How would you try to model that? And basically you take all these guys and you pretend it's a continuum. So you take North America and you pretend there's a continuum of generators, and then have a PDE for the frequency and phase at any point in the U.S. And then you simulate that PDE, and you can actually tune it to. Unfortunately, you can't see this very well, but go to this paper. It's really fun. They actually come with PDE models to try to explain how you get this behavior. But nobody's really followed up on that work, and you'd think it could lead to new designs on how to to deal with these issues. But what is the thing we want to solve? I mean, what is our goal? Allowing the fact that the disturbance here goes to Quebec and back again, is that a big deal? If you try to stiffen that flat, would the thing break? I mean, who knows? Nobody knows what the goals
I
are.
think it's all about having an efficient and effective control during disturbance and how we bring it back to normal.
That's exactly.
Which is very difficult.
Which is very hard, because we don't know. When you have a PDE model like this, we don't know how to address robustness. What's the phase margin we design for this PDE model? Whew, but at least, it's not. I mean, you could look at outputs at various places. So you could look at as an input, a Orlando, the power input, the load in Orlando, and as an input, and as an output, the frequency in New York State, and you could get an idea of the phase margin of that one-dimensional projection of the whole system, and get some intuition. I don't know. There it is. There's the phase, and this is just in a few minutes, and showing. So this is the phase again, and 80 degrees to 50 degrees is a lot, and this is over. What is it? 2 minutes or something. This is 2 minutes later than here. And I'm told that's an aberration. This doesn't happen very often. Then in 2 minutes, you'll go for such extreme changes in phase. But again, just to show you how remarkable it is, this solidarity of phase across half of the U.S. I mean, what an amazing control system. It's just beautiful. So,
Dots.
The dots are just measurements, or places where there's measurements of phase. Phase are measurement units. So they actually take it. No, they're just making the measurements. The dots are just for it. Oh no, they're not. Nothing to do with. No, it's all blue here. Those are just points where they're taking measurements.
Right, well, like the color code, right? They're green.
No, it's not consistent. Oh, what do you mean? The dots are measurements. They're nothing to do with phase.
Oh, okay, so they don't have to do with.
No, not at all.
Okay, never mind. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But
isolated spots of zero phase. For no reason.
No, nothing like that. Yeah. But I just find it remarkable. So it does change. The phase changes on the order of here it is again, 50, 52, a couple of minutes. But I mean, it's incredible, And again, the biggest thing is that, again, the reason that there's chaos, there's so much opportunity in this field, is the fact that when you get this wind, you have these changes in frequency that are more dramatic, and there's all sorts of references you can find on my website. Here's another one, explaining why the requirements for control are just increased dramatically with more wind, and I don't think today. Maybe in 10 years they'll tell me I was crazy, but today I don't think control algorithms are going to be the hardest problem. I don't think. You know, I don't think the balancing authority's role is going to change that much the next 50 years. We need resources, and probably not batteries is my hope, but who knows. And yeah, so yeah, and yeah, and you've seen this before. I mean, you've seen this. A BPA, 3 gigawatts in an hour. Man, that's not like things that you've ever seen before. You know?
Frequency reserve, I mean, what does it mean versus the reserve of generation? Sometimes you generate 100 megawatt
Yeah.
and you have a reserve of 20 megawatt
Yeah.
and the rest has been consumed. Does this
Yeah.
is it the same meaning or?
Well, that's the trouble with reserves. I told you there's 1,000 different kinds of reserves. Oh, yeah. Oh, this awful, what do you see, reserve capacity needs? Well, well, it's definitely true. Here the viewpoint of this paper is a status quo, that generators are going to have to supply that frequency regulation. You know, the generators will be doing this. That the balancing, that's one thing I do think will change. This idea that the balancing authority sends rho of t you've got balancing authority I sending rho of t to generators. That's got to change. You know, and right there they're saying, well, generators are going to have to get a much larger rho of t because there's going to be more wind. And they're not going to be able to. And batteries, no either. I mean, they're expensive and they wear out and they waste energy. So I think we'll find other resources to do it. And so we'll talk about that. So I think it's next lecture. It's still adaptive. We'll talk about how batteries could play a role and why, you know, they're good and bad. And I'll talk about alternatives in the next lectures. Yeah. But anyway, there's a crash course on secondary control. And again, the two ways of thinking, both contingency reserves is what you'll find in the book. And things have changed in the last few years so much that the biggest issue people talk about now is this. And actually, and again, it's the ramping that they're most scared of today. And that's why they have a separate market for upward ramp and downward ramp in California ISO in the Midwest. And again, I think they're crazy. I think it's a mistake. And it's because they've got a generation-centric point of view. It's sort of, you know, and there's different constraints up and down for generators, and it depends on whether they're fully loaded or if they're off and things like that. Yeah, it's a strange world. But that's all for today. Until next time.